We are just about live.
Well, it says it's streaming now.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for the technical delay there. We're back
Yes,
in
my apologies.
regular session here. We've just come out of executive session, had a little glitch with the YouTube, but we're back live. So thanks for your patience. Before we go into, we're going to go into the budget next, but before we do, we may have to, somebody could make a motion as to our topic in the executive session.
So I'd like to make a motion that we give Jeff the ability, with the blessing of the board, to speak with Mark Johnson on continuing his employment at Mountain Post Electric within the scope of employment at will and under the current
Under the terms we discussed, yeah.
under the other terms that were discussed.
Okay, we have a motion and I think we had a second by Carl.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Michelle, please note that's under the terms discussed in executive session.
Hey, Bryson, quick question. Is that something we're gonna have to ratify next month or?
No.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. So Mark, I'll turn it back over to you or Stacy and we'll jump into the budget.
We will, we'll have Stacy walk us through the budget. So Stacy, you're on.
Okay, great. If I could just ask everybody, because of the uncertainties of Zoom at times, if you can't hear me, if you could just wave your hand and let me know, and I'll try and do my best to look up and make sure nothing was lost in translation with I've gotten kicked off the Zoom meeting once today and everybody's frozen a couple times, so I'll just be on the lookout for that. So I want to go through the 2021 capital budget, and I thought the way I could do this in this Zoom environment is just to go through my budget takeaways, a little bit of what we've talked about, financial implications with the fire, and then I'll open it up to specific questions on the budget, if that works for everybody. So initially, what I want to talk about, some of the metrics that I weigh in on when I look at the budget, looking at tier, operating tier, debt service ratio, and other base financial ratios that look at, it's a measurement of the system's ability to earn margins sufficient to cover interest expense, long-term debt, and just to make sure we can show as a not-for-profit some margins to be able to, if we need to in the future, show banks we're financially viable if we need to go get additional lending. So some of the budget takeaways that I have just as a summary for this budget, the last board meeting I presented to you about the 10-year pro forma that I used to come up with the revenue and the power costs that I use as my assumptions for the 2021 budget. So I use the CFC Compass model, and we talked through that at the last meeting about how I come up with a projection of monthly kilowatt hour sales and the number per revenue class that I can project in 2021. I use the last 10 years of expenses and pivot on the last final year to project the next 10 years of budget. And then I look at the last year, what's happened, and a lot has happened this last year. So just wanted to review that real quick. With the work plan, I talked with Mark and Scott, and we spent a lot of time with the updated work plan. A big portion of the work plan this next year is the fiber. As you saw, that's about $6.5 million. And then in discussing the total cost of the fiber projects for phase 1 and phase 2, I have decreased that total project by a number, as you can see in the work plan, for possible contributions by a third party that could be using our fiber. So that's a significant cost and a reduction there. I am recommending no rate changes and no rate adjustments for 2021. Next year, I want to look at individual rates. And as I've gotten through billing this last 10 months, I've gotten some ideas of how I would like to recommend simplifying some rates in different rate classes. And of course, very interested in all your input, but I'll talk about that and present that little chunks at a time over the next few board meetings. I am projecting no decrease in or increase in power costs from Tri-State. There had been some talk on a possible decrease in costs or increase in the past, and Tri-State's fees remaining the same, so no adjustments there. And then just going to remain steadfast with the current rates that we have in place right now. Some other budget takeaways that I had in the budget, and I'll talk about the fire situation in a little bit. Mark and I have been looking into some loan payoffs, and I was really excited to present that to you this month. And unfortunately, I think I might have to hold off on that, and we'll talk about why. We have a current interest rate with CoBank right around 4%, and there was a possibility to take advantage of some FFB loan reimbursement loan funds at less than 1%. So I was pretty excited about that, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So I did address that in this budget, and we'll talk about whether that's viable or not going forward. The only change with employees, we had addressed those last month with you as well, as far as wages and increases. Now you can see that in a full summary form and in a by department summary as well. We did have one change in one employee that we're projecting 2021 that we hadn't discussed with you last month. We have a part-time employee that we would like to recommend becomes full-time. Currently, this part-time employee is a seasonal locator, electric line locator, and we'd like to move him into 2021 part-time line locator, part-time backup for GIS in Scott's department. So that was an add. I am projecting growth numbers in the budget, like I had told you about with my revenue projections, but steady kilowatt hour sales. So not a lot, hardly any growth in kilowatt hour sales. Again, I talked about the 0% increase for Tri-State costs. We did project as a management group the 2021 training expenses to remain as if we're going to be able to train and use those items. So as you notice, the expense items are similar to what they were in the past. We talked about changing those with COVID and people not being able to travel, but we thought it was very important to keep that training budget intact. Let's see, I did project a revenue decrease because right now we aren't charging late fees, interest. That will affect the budget a little bit. We aren't collecting expenses still for credit cards, and that's a cost. So that's projected for first quarter 2021. Hopefully after first quarter, we can go back to what we have stated in our bylaws and then the policies that we charge $2 charge for credit cards if you use a credit card, and that we charge late fees, both a $10 one time and a % interest as you're late. Let's see. Okay, so those are some big budget takeaways. As you'll notice, of course, the biggest budget takeaway is I am projecting with the revenue and the costs that I just talked about, operating margins of around $800,000 and total margins of 2.1 million. Let's see. And then I'd like to talk a minute about the financial implications that I've seen over just the last 3 weeks with the impact of the fire. So with the impact of the fire, I thought about revising the budget and redoing the budget for 2021, because I know we're going to have 300 to 400, could be more, meters that we're no longer able to collect revenue on. So when I initially put that in my 10-year pro forma, just to see how that would affect it, I used a 400 meter loss number, and it was about $250,000 loss in revenue. Now part of that's power costs, so really could be $100,000 loss. And I thought, okay, for 2021, I have some deferred revenue I could offset that with. So not too concerned about that number. Now that we feel better, it's not $1,300 or $1,400, but there was some equipment damaged. And with our last October billing, I had about 1,300 meters that we were having issues billing. Hopefully that continues to get better through November. So the next large impact of the fire is the capital intensiveness of the build. So if you see in my cash flow, I have some cash at the end of this year, right around 3 million. And if we don't do the buyout of the loan, I'll have funds available for additional capital expenditures for the rebuild. Right now, talking to Craig and staking in the engineering department, we're over $6 million in rebuild costs. What does that time frame look like? When will we spend that $6 million? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? We're still discussing that, but I am planning for, already we've had $450,000 to date, last 3 weeks, spent on rebuild items as it relates to the fire. And I haven't seen the mutual aid crews invoices yet, except for one. And then I know that our own payroll, we had significant overtime, double time expenses and costs, and I see payroll increased a lot for that. Our past payroll, and I'm expecting the next one to be higher as well. So over $6 million. So where I would fit that in the budget would be more of a work plan item. So that would go into the work plan. It wouldn't necessarily slide into the income statement because it won't be an expense unless we have to draw funds on it. It could decrease the amount of interest that we would normally get with these funds staying in the bank. Interest is, we're not making a lot of money on interest right now. So we do have the cash to get us through some of this intensive build. And then if we need more, we do have FFB funds that I would love to, would have loved to buy out a co-bank loan and take advantage of some decrease in interest, but I feel like we might need that money in the future with the rebuilds, but we'll have a better idea in the next couple months. And Scott and I could get together and revise the work plan as needed. And then on top of that, in the future, I don't know if our fire was declared a disaster area yet, but there is an opportunity to get some FEMA funds and FEMA fund reimbursement for part, all, some of that capital rebuild of the lines that were destroyed. So with that, yeah.
Stacy, on the Colorado managers call, the CREA has been working with the state of Colorado. The state would like to file a consolidated claim with FEMA because they said they needed to get over $8 million in losses. And I said, well, I think we're going to get you quite a ways to that. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. But they would like to file a consolidated claim from the state's perspective, and then we would potentially be able to get our money from that claim that's filed with the state. So we would be providing information to CREA. CREA would take that and provide it to the state, and then the state would do the work of actually filing the claim with FEMA.
Okay.
They're still working on it at this point, but that's what the state would like to do because they'll wrap their expenses as well as other expenses in there, and they think that that it would be easier to get that through FEMA with the legislative support that we would have.
Okay, that sounds good. FEMA funds would definitely be nice. I just know from talking to other co-ops over the last few weeks about the FEMA process that there's usually a lag of 1 year to 2 years before you're able to get reimbursed. So I'm just planning on a cash need this next year, 2 years. So.
And I would just add, there's a significant administrative burden to going through that FEMA process. So to the extent there's some advantages associated with economies of scale, joining in the state process, or even if they take over some of those payments, that's probably to Mountain Park's benefit.
Yeah, good ad. When I talk to all other co-ops, this significant burden of FEMA funds is is significant. But also the ability to be reimbursed 5, 6, 7, 4, 3, 2 million is worth it. So, okay. That's all I had for some takeaways and just going through some of the metrics that I use. Do you guys have specific questions for me with the budget?
Hey, Stacy, Jeff, I'm not sure. I see you had some CREA dues in here.
Yep.
I'm guessing they might go up by about 14%.
Oh, really?
Dues next
Okay.
year. Yeah, I don't know what that equates to for us, but
I was talking to Gloria,
mhm.
and she gave me these numbers. And
Oh,
she
okay.
said with COVID, they first quarter, second quarter, they're actually going to go down. Maybe that's different though. She was on our CFO biweekly update, and then I followed up with her afterwards. So I can check back in with her and,
Okay.
and check with if it's going to go up 14%. So I'll make that note. Thanks.
Dick, I think, has a question.
Oh, I have 2 or 3 items. Your budget calls for a refund of patronage in excess of $2 million.
Yes.
With what's going on and this rebuild of the damage, are we going to have those available without borrowing? Or should we anticipate that even though it's in there, it may not be at that level as things work out? You know, it's the highest we've ever projected. And I was just curious. I realize you put this together before a lot of this happened. I'm just wondering whether that's still realistic, and we should just have in our mind that it may not be that.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would point you to the cash flow statement, which is the last page of the budget. You know, our cash balance going into 2021 is right at 9 million. And I do have that patronage refund right around 2 million. So what I do is in the past, I make round numbers, you know, or not round numbers, but round years. So we're going to do a whole year distribution versus doing half a year. This was a little bit more than it's been in the past, but 1.7, 1.8. And I know just to keep in line with our 20 plus year payout, gets us closer to 22 years. I felt pretty comfortable. I feel like at times we want to play catch up because we had a few years with Tri-State that we got behind on distributing and would love to if we could catch up. So at the end of 2021, 3.6 million. If I don't take the cash needed for COVID, that's 5.6 million. I think a rebuild for the system is around 6 million and maybe spread out over a couple of years. Again, not 100% sure what that looks like, but I think we will be okay. But yeah, I definitely like to revisit this in 2 months, 3 months prior to us.
I had a few other items.
Sure.
The contribution, the one that's basically management's contribution budget is it's supposed to be half of 1%, but I noticed you had it less than that.
Yeah.
Was there a reason for decreasing it less than the 0.5%, or was that just, you know?
There was. Mark and I talked about it. It was a while ago, 6 months ago. He had talked about 0.5% being high. So we had come down to a number that was more in line with what we've done in the past few years, more realistic.
Okay. And I noticed the attorney's fees budget went up by 60%.
Yes.
Do you know something that we don't know, Bryson?
We constantly overrun this budget, and I constantly have conversations with Levi, and I called him up a month ago and I said, Levi, I never like as an accountant having this conversation with you because I want to tell you what I want the budget to be. I want it to be 40,000 and you're not listening and you're going over it. And I said, what's a realistic number that you think this next year, what you have on your plate? And again, I don't like doing this, but we settled with 85,000 with the fiber and the numerous items that he is working on now that are going to lead into 2021. Consistently has been closer to 60,000. And
Okay.
so good question. It's a lot more.
it just, we may have to sit and renegotiate. So we'll see what happens there. A couple of other items. A remodel of the mailroom, $180,000. What are we doing in the mailroom? Creating a couple of offices?
Oh,
The
you're
file,
not looking,
It's
you're looking at the capital budget
capital budget, right?
in the engineering room?
No, it says
it
the
says the file room.
file room.
Oh, yes, yes. So we have a file room here that we don't, since we're going more paperless, we no longer have a need for big file cabinets, but we do have a need for more office space and more privacy. So Scott had worked up a blueprint to add more offices in there. And some people like Jessica have a tiny little office, and in order for her to do her job well, she needs a little bit more space. And so that's what that is. 2 more office spaces in the file room.
Well, I just, when I walked through the office, I noticed we have other spaces that are open. I was just curious as to what that was. That's not a problem. Then you also add engineering, new furniture and carpeting and stuff like that. Are these things necessary? You know, we're going along, and we've always talked in the past about vehicles, stuff like this. And I have no problem if these things are needed, but what we're going through right now, we have no idea what it's going to cost us with some of the things that are happening. And I'm just wondering whether or not this is a good time to be doing this. So,
You know, when I look at the capital,
you know,
good question. When I look at the capital budget, I look at, we have a fairly large building here, and we do fairly minimal repairs every year. I was happy to see that engineering and operations had submitted some budget items to do some capital improvements on a really, in the grand scheme of things, smaller scale to the office. And then Jessica and I had talked that the thought had switched to, we really want employees to think of this place as an employer of choice, which also includes working in an environment that has a little bit nicer carpet. Not that this carpet's pretty old, so we're not asking for, like, we have 5-year-old carpet and we want plush, amazing carpet. We want to upgrade the carpet. We have really old furniture that's falling apart, and furniture is expensive. So we want to upgrade the furniture, starting department by department. And some of this was scaled down a little bit. Some of these asked to get it closer to a total 1.4 million, but we ended up talking to Scott engineering. Anything you want to add, Scott?
No, I was just wanted a general idea of what's going on. And the only other item I had is annual meeting speakers are not a capital budget item. The last item on the capital budget was annual meeting speakers.
Yeah, Dick, I think that's actually speakers as in equipment.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Speakers, the actual equipment.
And corrected. I was just curious. I'd like to hear the explanations as to why we're doing things. And you've given me an explanation, and thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's the fee that we pay to Jeff.
and there's
for
going
his
to be a
I
drive-in
just wanna make
movie
sure he's
screen as
passing it
well.
around.
And Dick, with all of these things, including the capital credit, what we will do is like we did this year with capital credits, we'll look and make sure that we're in a good position, and we may postpone return of those until later in the year. With some of the other capital expenditures, as we went through this year, we looked at where could we potentially cut back. And so just because it's in the budget doesn't mean that we're going to spend it, but we want to know the effect of having it in the budget if we do spend it.
Lacey, I have one question. Go ahead,
Liz.
Carl.
I have a couple of questions. The capital budget with the wood pellet boiler control upgrade. There's been some contention in the past about the wood boiler, period. Are we gonna stick with the wood boiler?
I believe, Carl, that is, we are upgrading it, and it is the wood boiler that's currently there, but we're going to upgrade it so it's not the wood boiler.
Upgrade it to what?
To something that runs off of gas, which would be cheaper and more efficient.
Okay, so it would take $50,000 to upgrade it to a new system, or what?
Yes, that's the estimate that we have, to be able to basically remove the existing boiler and then put in a more efficient gas boiler to do basically the same thing.
Okay, and another question is, when are we going to get a final assessment of the fire damage to poles and everything else? I assume that's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the road. Is that correct or not?
We have been working with operations and engineering to identify, because we needed to have a preliminary estimate to put into the FEMA. And you are correct that as we work through this, we have identified a number of poles that probably need to be replaced, but they didn't need to be replaced in order to restore service. So we're collecting those costs, and we're probably 6 months or so until we get into what the actual number will be. We will keep refining the estimate as we continue working on this stuff. But the bottom line is that this is the best estimate that we have, but it will continue to be refined.
Okay, and so that estimate will probably go up, and I don't know what it entails, whether it's pole testing or just a look-see attitude, whatever, but 6 months down the road, is that budget going to be close to what we're projecting?
Scott, do you want to talk specifically about how we are going through the process of testing poles to then determining whether they need to be replaced? We can't hear you, Scott. You unmuted yourself, but we can't hear.
Scott,
Okay.
you can come into my office if you want.
Scott's going to go over to Stacy's office so that we can hear him.
Seems like in this budget, we should include a computer with a microphone that works for Scott.
Well, we have actually replaced a couple of our computers. Rich's computer had issues with the microphone and with the camera, so.
Okay. Well, when I go back to my office, I'll drop off and re-sign in, and maybe that'll fix it. We had the pole testers come through the fire areas over the last couple of weeks. I think they've been gone for about a week. We have an estimate of which poles are emergency or priority poles. We have those designed, and then there is a classification of chart 1 and chart 2. And I believe the chart 2 is the worst of the classification, and we'll be looking at possibly replacing those. I have not seen the final report of how many poles there are, and we're still working off of getting the priority poles done.
And so when do you expect a final report of what has to be replaced and the cost of it?
We did a cost analysis of replacing a good part of the system. We did a visual on a lot of it, and then there were other neighborhoods where we estimated in replacing everything in the neighborhood, which probably is not going to be needed. But for the purpose of the FEMA estimate, we wanted it to be a worst case. That estimate was $6.8 million.
And so $6 million is probably the most expensive avenue, but it's going to be less than that.
That's my hope.
And
That's
Carl,
your,
as Stacy talked about, some of this will be done over multiple years. So although we have $6 million in the budget for 2021, we may spend some, less in 2021 and spend some of that money in 2022 or even 2023.
Yeah, I don't.
okay, well, Mark, I understand that, but if the poles are damaged or not serviceable, how can we delay them out to 2022 or 2023?
Well, as Scott talked about the different levels, some of them are serviceable. Some of them are must replace. And so we can delay on some of them if we choose to, but some of them we will need to replace. And we know which poles those are at this point. When we had the mutual aid crews in, we identified poles that we thought needed to be replaced. They went out, they looked at them, they did their own assessment and thought that the pole was in good enough shape to leave as is. So as we go through this, we'll focus on first the emergency replacement, then the CHAR 2, and then the CHAR 1, to where that some of the poles are burnt, but they're still serviceable. And so if we need to reduce cost for 2021, then that's what we would put off until the following year.
Okay, and so what is the budget for poles that need to be replaced and poles that can be put off, as opposed to the total $6 million?
I don't have that information right now.
We will get that information and send that to the board. Scott's estimate that we did for FEMA was 6.8. We put 6 million in here. I don't know if the 800,000 is the differential in the poles, but we'll get that information to the board.
Okay, and you get that information to the board, but how does that affect the budget?
I can talk about that. So, Carl, the way that the replacement costs affect the budget, they'll be like as if you were adding, let's say, $6 million to the work plan. So it doesn't affect the income statement. It doesn't affect the expenses on the income statement or the income, but it does affect what I call the capital expenses. So it affects our cash, and it's an investment in replacement of this equipment. So it won't change the margin of the company this year directly. It could affect the interest income because the money's not in the bank earning any interest. It could affect the income statement or the expenses if we have to borrow loan funds and get additional money. Right now, I have right around $6.5 million I could use for not 6.5 million. Let me see. Go to the last page of on the cash flow. At the end of this year, I have 3.6 million. So I have about 5.6 million in cash without doing the co-bank pay down and refinancing that. So I have 6.5 million in cash right now that I can use for this. I have approximately $10 million in FFB loan funds that we could get for to use as well if we need it.
Okay, and so you're telling me that as far as the 2021 budget items, that we got enough cash or borrowing ability to cover the poles that need to be replaced, but in the long run, we're not sure. Is that correct or not?
No, I'm definitely telling you we have enough cash to cover it. I guess what I'm also saying is there's an opportunity cost that we're choosing to give up when we have to dedicate this money, cash, directly to replacing this equipment. I can't do something else with it that would help the financials look better, decrease interest expense. But I have right around 6 million that I can use for this next year, next 2 years, next 3 years. If it's more than 6 million, I will need to get loan funds.
Stacy, how will depreciation work with this, with what got destroyed? Like stuff that's being replaced this year will be depreciated in 2020 and then it'll in 2021, will it show up in the 2021 budget? I mean, that seems to me like as far as our ratios go and our margins go, where the impact could be if we have to depreciate. I mean, we think of like, I think of all the mirrors and all that equipment.
Yeah, the hard part with this, and I thought about that as well, and that's a great question. So that will increase depreciation expense, but not the beauty, as an accountant, you want to close those work orders as soon as possible, because once you close the job, it goes to plant, you start depreciating it. In this case, with FEMA funds and with the large amount of work that's going on, we have made the decision to separate into smaller work orders, and we can close it, but we also have one large job that's open. Once we close it, which I'm guessing is 6 months, 8 months, 9 months from now, that goes to plant, we start depreciating it. So that would possibly hit the end of 2021. My guess is it might be closer to 2022, increasing depreciation.
Okay, so we won't see a big depreciation expense this year or next year due to the fire. You don't think? I only ask that because
okay, yeah, Scott and I don't think so. No, we could close them faster. We could, I guess. I don't know if we have the ability. People won't start building, so we're gonna next year, because of the seasonality of our system, we aren't gonna be able to do a lot in the winter, but possibly spring, summer, fall. Close them late fall, Q1 2022, and then I start depreciating. So I don't think we'll see this right away. No, I didn't project that.
Okay, I just was like, okay, if we really get hit with reduced energy sales because of COVID, and we have a depreciation expense, how much deferred revenue do we have to make up that difference and meet our ratios? I mean, I think we have pretty much deferred revenue, but then I was like, well, I don't know what the depreciation looks like. So,
yeah, great question.
And keep in mind too, Liz, that the stuff that was there, some of it was fully depreciated, other parts of it still had depreciation left, and so we will be replacing some of what was the depreciation with new depreciation. So it's not necessarily an additional dollar of depreciation. Some of it will be taken up by the fact that we had something that wasn't fully depreciated.
Okay, that's helpful. I hadn't really necessarily wrapped my head around that portion. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Good add. That's true.
Carl, did you have additional questions?
No, I'm satisfied with the answers. I don't know that I fully understand them, but I'm satisfied at this point.
Okay, and I think to make sure that we have answered your question, we have the $6 million of cash that Stacy talked about, plus we have the $10 million that we can borrow that basically RUS owes us the money because we completed projects, but we haven't decided to exercise that at this point. So that gives us about $16 million of capacity. We don't necessarily want to borrow unless we have to, but we have about $16 million of capacity should we need it. And we don't believe that we'll need anywhere close to that for the rebuild.
And I understand that, but I was curious as to when the final assessment was going to be made, or if there's a projected date. that we could include in the budget. So that was my, big concern.
Right, and we may look at doing or bringing to the board a mid-year adjustment to the budget if we believe that it's necessary to address some of those things, because we may be included $6 million in the budget and it's really going to be $3 million, or we included 6 and it's 7. And we should know more about FEMA and the money that they're going to give us, because the money that they give us will offset the cost that we incur as well.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I understand FEMA is a government organization and slow to respond. But we have issues up here too in Jackson County of damage, and I don't know what assessment has been made up here.
I know that Rich had done some assessment, and we talked about it at the last board meeting on Highway 125 and 127. The assessment that he and the folks, Joe Lance, that had looked at those areas, that it was minor damage, much less than what we had anticipated. But it is something that we are still looking at, that will be included in damage that we suffered. So.
Okay, and Mark, one question, and I don't know if this is the right time to bring it up, but most of that damage was caused by backfires set by the Forest Service or whoever managed the fire. I mean, you can drive along the road and see the dragon eggs or whatever they call them right next to the road, but they charred the poles, and I don't know what responsibility they have to the damage of private property of mountain parks.
And I will see if Bryson wants to weigh in on federal liability or state liability related to damaging of private property in fighting a fire.
So yeah, we'd have to look into the specific circumstances leading to this liability. Generally, governments have what's called sovereign immunity. So, that's your starting point, and their liability arises from a statutory waiver of sovereign immunity. So there is probably some immunity here, maybe absolute immunity, but we'd have to dive into the statute and see if there's any sort of waiver here, federal waiver of liability under this circumstance. But like I said, with most governments, the starting point is sovereign immunity with liability arising only from statutory waivers.
And so the translation of that, Carl, is they're not going to pay us anything.
Well, but
an argument could be made that if they hadn't done it, our poles would have burnt up anyway. In fact, more would have burnt up.
Well, I disagree with that, Liz, because my travels along the road, they could have started the fire instead of right next to the road. They could have went 20 feet farther and saved our poles. And I don't know how much damage and what assessment has been made to the poles. If they have to be replaced, that's certainly a cost to the membership.
Yeah, so if there were a liability, say a private party did it, that would be a tort liability. As an example, under the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act, the Colorado government has immunity for pretty much all its actions except for those torts specifically accepted out under that act. There is a similar, though shorter, act for the federal government as well, and we'd have to look at how these specific circumstances fit under that act and if there's any liability that they've waived protection on under these circumstances.
And
are you gonna look at that?
Yeah, we'd be happy to look at that. So,
And Carl, this could be something that the state could include in their FEMA request. So they could potentially get federal money to reimburse us for the damage that they did.
Well, I would certainly include that in FEMA requests, so.
We will do that. Any other questions from the board? Did we lose Jeff? It's dark, but I don't think he's in there.
Just a quick question, Stacy. Remind me how much deferred revenue we have right now. Could you?
Yeah, we have 1,750,000 of that. Let's see, is it 750,000? No, we have just over 2 million, and 750,000 has to be used this year or re-deferred.
Used in 2020.
Correct.
Okay, and is there a limit to how much we can use in 2021 if
No.
we have to?
No.
Whatever's left over.
Yep.
Okay, and when our lenders look at our ratios, they don't care where the revenue comes from. If we use
Correct. They use our margins. And, yeah.
Okay, I just thinking worst case scenario if we really get into it with COVID, and our revenues are way down what we have to draw on, and I feel pretty comfortable looking at our budget. Between if things really got bad, we'd still be okay with our deferred revenue. I know that's not exactly what you projected as far as what the budget is, but I did look. I went back and looked at January, February, March for 2021 and said, okay, what happens if we have 30% less energy sales in those months because no one's coming, but
Right.
people still have to heat their homes. What does that look like? And I feel like, we could make it through the year. And not saying that'll happen, but
Yep.
just feeling like we don't need to adjust this. We don't need to make, in my opinion as a director, this budget provides us with meeting our members' needs and doesn't put us at risk if there's a big blow up these next 3 months, 5 months. So I'm in support of the budget. I'd move to pass it.
Great. Thanks.
Jeff, unmute yourself. Okay.
Thanks for the motion, Liz. Do we have a second? I have a second by Dick. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Nope. Go ahead, Justin.
I mean, just don't be afraid to take things off of that work plan and capital budget items, obviously, if need be. I think you did make that clear, but.
Right.
Yeah, I believe in 2020, we removed close to $3 million from the plan.
Right. Yeah.
Knowing the fiber project was there, trying to make that work within the constraints of keeping rates low.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, there you have it, Stacy.
Thank you.
Betcha.
Okay, Jeff, I think we could do C and D together. They are just ratifications of decisions that were made in October. The West Grand filter request and the Grand Kids grant request.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We had a motion to ratify the West Grand filter quote by Liz and a second by Justin. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. And then we've,
To ratify the grandkids grant request, which would be D.
okay, thanks, Liz. Got a motion by Liz and a second by Justin. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Looks like the motion carries. Do we want to go into policies, Mark, or let's maybe we go jump ahead of those?
Well, the staff, Levi made some changes to D1, D2, and D4. But I felt that since these are board policies, the board should really weigh in on any changes that they want to make to the policies. So you have them, but I think we could table those to give board members more time to look at them and then provide us with any changes that they would like to make to them.
That sounds good. Is everybody okay with that?
Hold on, Dick, I think wants to say something.
I had one question. There were references in, I think it was D4. No, it's either D2 or D4 referencing other parts of our bylaws or sections. And I'm wondering if we could have those emailed to us so we could see how they interface.
They actually,
we can.
if you scroll all the way down, they're on other pages. Just keep scrolling the document down in their LinkedIn. I think you're thinking.
No, I
Oh.
didn't. So that's what I was asking. I didn't see him in there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and table those then, Mark, and we'll bring them back next month.
And in between now and then, we will send you any sections that are referenced in those three policies.
Okay.
We want to jump ahead to staff reports.
Yes, we can. Because we already did H, just a reminder to everybody that Dick is our guy.
Mhm.
And so we can move ahead to the engineering report. You see Scott's report there. And I don't know if Scott, if you have anything you want to add, and if not, then we could take questions. So Scott, do you have anything you want to add? Oh, he would, but we can't hear him.
I had one question. What was the problem with the gas lines at Grand Park?
Scott is going back over to Stacy's office so he can respond to your question, Dick. And there is Scott.
Okay. Gas company came in after the contractor installed the electric facilities, and the gas lines were in conflict with the electric, in some cases underneath some of our facilities directly. And so we're working with Clark Lipscomb and I hope with Xcel Energy to get stuff moved so that we have adequate separation.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Go
how's the map wise? I mean, that guy making you guys pull your hair out on that.
We are,
See any
I've
resolution?
been working with NISC, trying to put some pressure on them to fix the customer data. Right now, for instance, if I type in my own address, it takes me to a location up by Grand Lake, which is not correct. So the rest of the map data, we have actually been updating all of the work that we've done with respect to the fire, and it is live on the database, and I can see it, although I have a few things that I need to fix before I can train people on how to use it. But I think the biggest thing now is correcting the customer data and then getting our guys time to work on it and start using it. We kind of had to pull back because we needed to get a whole lot of work out in a real short order. And so we used the old system for the purpose of all of the fire damage. And so we need to fall back and start training our people and using it now that things are starting to slow down with respect to the fire. Any other questions? I do have some information on the poll test data. If you would like me to share it, or if you would like to do it in a different session, we can do that. As far as how many polls are in what category.
Go ahead, Scott.
Okay, let me go get my computer. I'll be right back.
Perhaps we can move on to the operations and safety report while Scott's getting his computer.
Go ahead, Mark. Is that you?
That's going to be me. So if you have any questions on the operations report, I'll try and answer those.
Okay.
Hold on just a
Can you hear
second,
me?
Scott.
Oh, can I hear?
Can you hear me?
Yes, but hold on just a second, Scott. Any questions on the operations report?
It'll echo. I can mute this.
Doesn't look like it, Mark.
Okay. Well, and he's gone again. So let's move on to the safety report.
Okay.
You have to get to that. We continue to work safely and not have a lost time accident. You see the numbers, 426,000 plus hours. We're doing our safety meetings weekly on Tuesday basis. We did talk earlier in my report about the possibility of a new safety officer coming in. We have been working with Tri-State on some issues there. And then there were 2 near misses that were reported by Rich in his report.
Any questions on the safety report? If there isn't any, can we get a motion to approve this safety report?
So moved.
Motion by Liz and a second by Mark. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Scott.
Well,
Okay.
one quick thing on, it's not really within our safety report, but the contractor that's working on Highway 125, they did have an incident today, and where one of their workers was injured. It's not, doesn't appear to be a severe injury. That doesn't count towards our lost time or our statistics, but I did want to make the board aware of that, and we will provide more information when we get that. So with that, Scott, go ahead.
Okay. So we tested 984 polls. 24 polls were identified as priority. That's 2.4%. 231 polls were identified as charred 1. I've got to see whether charred 1 means we should fix it or charred. I'm assuming that those need to be replaced at some point. That's 23.4%. 113 polls, 11.5% charred 2. 616 polls, 62.5% were okay. So I think we're looking at overall replacement of about 250 polls from what the poll testers identified.
Scott, this is Carl. So what does that equate to in money?
Are they on the side of a cliff, Carl, or can you drive right to them in a wheeled vehicle?
I think an average of about 7,000 to 8,000 a poll is probably conservative.
So what is that? What is that total?
I have it 8,000.
Well, 250 polls at $7 is 1.7 million.
Yeah, so about 2 million bucks.
And so is that included in the budget since we have that information?
Is that the 6.8 million?
Well, yeah, it's
Yes.
part of the 6.8
Yes,
million,
part-
yeah.
But the 6 point whatever million is FEMA money coming back to us, which we're not sure of, but those poles need to be replaced, I would assume, in some appropriate time. So is that immediate or is that long term?
Well,
Well-
the 24 is going to be immediate, and then the other 230 would be over the next couple of years. What we're looking at is loss of life in the pole, not necessarily that the pole is structurally unsound.
Okay.
And Carl, to clarify, we put the money, that $6.8 million in the budget. We are hopeful that FEMA will reimburse us for some of it, but we are moving forward in the budget as if we have to pay all of that money ourselves.
And that's, in my mind, appropriate because I'm not sure that money will be reimbursed. So I applaud you for that.
Scott, I took or watched the CREA wildfire mitigation webinar, which was pretty interesting. They were talking about, Excel was starting to talk about how they're doing pole in their high risk areas, they're doing pole inspections. And I know these are already, this is a different situation, but they're starting to do pole inspections from the top so that they can see cross arms and things that they wouldn't see from the bottom. And they're using some drones to do it. And they did a pilot program last year. And they were picking up things, failure points that they said they couldn't pick up from the ground. And I'm curious, as you look to the future, are we going to change how we do pole? Do you see the vendors who offer those services to us changing how they do it? Or do we continue to do it the way we do now?
Well, our pole testing would probably, if we're continuing to use my guess is there's two different types of contractors. So pole testing includes boring the pole. Usually they do that at ground line. So it's a way to detect the rot in the pole. It's completely different from looking at the equipment on the pole. If we're going to be doing that, we'll either be looking at bringing another contractor in with the drone to do that, and or putting the drone in the budget ourselves. I'm sure our guys would really love to get some experience with that, but I don't think that's in the budget for this year.
And Liz, I would just remind you that Excel has a charge before the PUC to be able to help them with wildfire mitigation and other things, which will be on people's bills. And San Isabel has also approved a charge for wildfire mitigation as well.
Yeah.
That members will start to pay.
Yeah, it seems like this should be, that discussion of what we think is appropriate and needed and how it gets paid for might be addressed in the wildfire mitigation plan.
Yes, absolutely.
So, but it's just food for thought. I mean, it was interesting to see the photos of the tops of their poles and the splits going down from the top that they couldn't see from the ground.
Any other questions for Scott?
Yeah, yes, this is Carl again. Why are we not, since we have been impacted the most probably of any co-op, why are we not addressing that issue of looking at the poles from the top down?
We haven't even discussed it yet. We're still trying to get the system rebuilt.
Yeah, I'm sorry to bring it up now. I mean, I know we're in a pinch to get things built And another question I asked at that webinar, which I think is relevant for us to think about going forward, is what wind speeds are they designing their lines to as we rebuild, and or as we in the future, and how would we know what's the appropriate wind speed? And so they're talking about taking the NERC wind speed of 90 miles an hour that applies to their transmission and applying it to distribution lines that they have in high risk areas. So all those types of things, I hope we'll see a plan. And yeah, we can't get everything all at once.
Okay, and so when do we include that in the budget?
That would be something we will be looking at the wildfire mitigation plan in 2021. And so it will probably be included in the 2022 budget.
Okay, I'll look forward to it.
But I'm guessing there are some things in this budget. So I saw about $150,000 in new reclosers and sectionalizing equipment that I'm guessing has something to do with reliability and wildfire.
That's what we keep that in the budget every year to upgrade and maintain that equipment.
Okay.
And so when does drone technology come about?
Well, the drone technology is there, and there are a number of utilities that are using it. Before I left MLMP, we had acquired a drone to be able to do line segmenting and doing stuff for projects to determine what we would need to do. And we actually had 6 of our employees certified to be able to fly the drone because they have to get FAA certifications. And so we can look at that. The drones are expensive. The one that we bought was probably on the lower end. It was $2,500 for the drone, and then the training is pretty a minimal cost. But we will look at that, and it may be that it's cheaper for us to have somebody else do it because they will have potentially better equipment than we would purchase. Because some of the drones have cameras, some of them have heat sensors and that kind of thing. So we'll look at that as part of our wildfire mitigation because the drones can also help with that as well.
Yeah, it also seems like that could be a collaborative thing that we either work with other NISC co-ops so that it interfaces with MapWise, or that CREA takes on, or we encourage contractors, a contractor who would be developed to provide those services to Colorado co-ops. One thing I thought about as I was driving up 125 is, how far our line is up on the side of hills. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to have someone walk the whole thing. And then maybe they have to go back and walk it again. How many times, and maybe it's just the pole inspectors who are doing that, but it sure, I looked at that and I was like, now that could be a real time saver. And I don't mean, we can't do that now, but in the future, I think some of the line over on the Gore and that area, I'm just like, what a time saver that could be to get an initial eye on our lines in this kind of situation.
Mark, has there been a comparison of the bottom testing of poles as compared to drones as to what is more reliable?
It's a completely different test.
Yeah, I think, Carl, you're looking at two different things. The test on the bottom is looking at whether or not the pole is rotted and is structurally not sound. The top of the pole is looking at splits and other issues that the pole might have with wind speeds and that type of thing. So they're not necessarily testing for the same thing. So even if you had a drone, you're probably still going to do the testing at the bottom of the pole, and obviously can't do that with a drone because you've got to be able to drill into the pole.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? Okay, then let's move on to finance. Stacy, anything else that you want to talk about?
Yeah, just a couple. KRTA ratios. Bethany and I attended a Zoom meeting about those ratios, and they just came out 2 weeks ago, right before the fire. So I have those in hand, and I'll try and get those out to the board for the next board meeting and do just a quick presentation of my thoughts and a summary of those. Fraser franchise fee, we have an agreement with Fraser. A franchise fee will be added to those electric accounts, just so you all are aware, as your members might see these or will see these in December for November usage. So the franchise fee took effect November 1st. So we bill for November usage December 10th. So just so you know that. We have some cool, and I talked about this a month ago and then 2 months ago, but it's now done connectivity with Western United. So what we used to have to do with the PO process is we would send an email to Western United. We would ask for them to order items. They would send an email back. We would reconfirm. We'd redo this. It was a somewhat time-intensive, email-intensive process. Well, now we go into our NASC system, and we go to do a PO for those items we want to order, and those automatically get shipped over to Western United. They look at it, ship it back with the current cost numbers. We approve it, goes back to Western United. They order it. Once the items are received here, we have checks and balances in NASC as well. And then the invoice that they have goes directly into a template in our invoice accounting system. We don't have to enter anything. We just approve it. It's been working really slick. So that's 2 weeks and some huge efficiencies there. So excited about that new functionality in NASC. That's pretty exciting. Another new functionality we use is we did the retirement checks, sent them all out. And as they come back, instead of getting each and every envelope, opening them up, taking them out, putting the account number in and saying we got their money back, we were able to just run them through a scanner as we get them back every day, and their accounts are updated. So that worked really well as well, and really excited about that functionality. And the third one, NASC, we had a new fire service order for all these members that were affected by the fire. We track it. That functionality has been great as well. So just add that to my report.
So are there any questions? Liz, you're muted.
And Carl's moving around so much. Just a quick question for the folks whose meters have been pulled, destroyed. I'm guessing because their meters have been pulled, they're not going to be charged a service availability charge.
Nope, they're not. So the service order right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We created a separate category within the NISC system. So it is idle fire, so that we know that their meter was destroyed by fire. There is a process that it goes through, and then they don't get charged the $29. They have up to a year to come back to us and tell us they're going to rebuild and what their plans are. And then we can go through the process of, recreating the service for them. And there will be some savings for them on that side as well. They don't have to do the engineering deposit. But the bottom line is that we have taken care of that so that they're not being billed the $29.
Okay, and Bryson and Levi are all okay with that as far as our tariff. We're not going to run into any hot water. I mean, I would think we'd run into any hot water, but never know.
I haven't discussed that specifically with Levi, but I think he is okay, but I will bring it up with him for sure.
I mean, I was just curious if you see any issues with that. I'm glad we've done it.
Well, and I think that we're okay because we're not actually providing service to them because in most cases, there's nowhere for us to provide service.
Right.
the way that the system was designed, the system didn't really care if we were providing service. If they were an active member, they got charged $29. And so what we did is come up with a way to make them idle and then also mark them as fire so that we can track the people that were either their homes were damaged or lost, and that we can then, as they continually get ready to rebuild or whatever they're going to do, then we will work with them and engineering to be able to make sure that they get what they need to rebuild. Any other questions for Stacy? Okay, Joe, you're up.
Stacy,
You're
I
up, Joe.
don't know the best place to bring it up, but I noticed the patch for IT is shifting from 21 to 20. Did that have any effect on the budget at all, or is it just not that large an amount?
Sorry, I missed this first part of that. I had someone at my
The
door.
major IT patch that was supposed to be budgeted for 2021, because of some scenarios, Joe said it's probably going to take place sooner. Did that have any significant effect on the budget?
Joe seems
Our virtual server.
That the one, oh, yeah, we talked about that. I'll let him explain.
No, so we're still gonna use 2021 dollars. We just might do it at the very tail end of 2020.
Okay.
Bills due in 2021.
All right.
It just saves us making a patch instead of just then doing an upgrade.
That's okay. I just didn't know whether it had a major effect on the budget. If not, no problem.
And I want to say, Stacy, I appreciate the fact that office services is under by as much as it is.
Yeah,
think
me too.
That's
Me too.
a big, I don't know.
It
It means someone's picking up some slack, I think. I mean, so everybody's working hard.
They're working hard and smart and efficient. NASC's helping. And it will help once we get 100% up to speed, right, Joe? But yeah, paperless helps too. And there's some innovative ideas up there with the girls. So thanks for noticing that there. And we've got some really good talent. I feel lucky, very lucky to have everybody I have that we've been able to make some really good changes there in the past year. And Amanda and Kim are great ads too. So thanks.
So Joe, anything you want to add to your report?
No, I just wanted to say that next month I'll share some live statistics from our solar fields. We have that access now. I don't have those portals completely built. I was hoping to have them done for today, but originally the portal combined both us and Highline, so the data looked very weird because it had their solar data in it as well. Yeah, finally got that separated, and now I need to build the portal. So I'll show you that next month, but that's all. And I think the other thing I guess we could say is that it was really interesting how, if anybody heard how Estes Park managed to convince Western or WAPA to allow them to use their fiber through the Adams Tunnel. It's been something that several folks have worked on for many, many years, and they managed to get it done in about 48 hours. It was amazing to watch that team come together and do that as well, if anybody knows that happened.
And did they have to, so it came through so the route came through up out of Estes Park, through the Adams Tunnel onto, I'm guessing, the tri-state line? Or that line that goes, I mean, because a bunch of that stuff got burnt up.
Yeah, it's all on WAPA's fiber. It comes through the tunnel by the FAR pumping plant and then right down through the McKenzie substation, Granby, and they hand off to Northern Water here at Windy Gap, go across the highway where they pick up a CenturyLink connection to the hospital to tie into Thor. It's an interesting, they looked at using our poles and our fiber, but getting it built in the short window they had was not possible. Now,
48 hours.
It was crazy how it worked. It really was. But it also was carrying some traffic for PRPA as well, because they were really, they were backed into a corner over there. They really had already lost some 911 service, and it put Estes Park back, connected them to the rest of the world again.
Well, and thanks whoever spoke to whoever needed to be spoken to. I know that came in on the weekend. So thanks, you guys.
We were out there.
Any other questions for Joe? Okay, Jessica, any comments that you want to make on yours? Or additions?
I don't think so. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Oh.
Great. Okay.
Then we will move on to Rob. Rob is always good for a question or two. So Rob, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I need to update the timeline on the West Grand School District electric bus. So they're expecting delivery now in January. They just had the State Transportation Agency approve the signage, so that took a while. And it's going to be this week or next week that we're working on getting the charger installed for the school district. The next thing is the Green Power Advisory Committee. They moved their meeting. It was scheduled originally for November 10th, this Tuesday. It's been pushed back to December 1st. Last month, you asked me to attend the Basin Electric's virtual annual meeting. As you'll recall, I always say this, so we remind ourselves how Basin is tied to Mountain Parks Electric. Tri-State gets 10% of their power supply from Basin, and sometimes their costs can affect Tri-State's wholesale rate. So Basin had that annual meeting last Wednesday. It was 2 3-hour sessions. The first one was open to the public. They spoke in very general terms about their finances and their plan going forward. They're basically still dealing with the financial impact of owning that subsidiary coal gasification company in which they it's profitable at $4 a therm for natural gas, and the open market pricing right now is $1 a therm because of fracking. So they're working on a plan to liquidate that asset and retire it. There are parts of it that have some value to it because it's tied to other byproducts that they're making. So they're basically working on that plan. In the members only session in the afternoon, they got more into the financial details of that. And so that was really the focus of their meeting, what their plan is. They're also looking at early retirement of their coal generating assets and trying to do all this without raising rates. And they think they're going to be able to do it, but they can't shut down their gas company immediately. The financial impact would be too big and it would have an immediate rate impact on their members. So they're trying to do it over time because they think they can do that with a smaller financial impact. So that kind of summarizes their meeting, I would say. I believe the board did have some questions about their fixed charge number 1 that Tri-State has paid for its member co-ops for some time. We can talk about that in more detail, probably if you have another executive session or something, if you want to know more about that. I have some more information with that. Lastly, I think at the, oh, not lastly, almost lastly, this is the penultimate thing. So last month, you had asked us to look into a contingency plan for the 2021 annual meeting. If it happened that we were still unable to have in-person gatherings due to the COVID restrictions. So Mark and I have been working on this. We think there is a possibility if we decide to go this route and if we have to go this route, to work with the local radio station KRKY. They have a little outpost here, but they mainly work out of Breckenridge and Steamboat Springs. And so anyway, what they've got is called an RF modulator, to where if we had a large enough parking place for cars to park, they could transmit a radio signal over a specific radio station over your car radio. So that's an option that we are looking into. We have some initial estimates. It's not very expensive. So we're continuing to look into that, and hopefully we'll have some more information for you on that soon. And lastly, I may have missed this. You had as an action item, It was the DOE grant. Did we decide to table that?
That was tabled.
Okay, all right. That's all I have in addition to my written report, and I will be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Did you guys, I hate to even bring this up, since it's tabled, I was curious if you guys, if anyone attended the webinar for it, the DOE.
Yeah. Rob did, and I think Mark did as well.
Okay, good, excellent.
And we are working on getting slides to provide to the board because based on the webinar, what they did is they took that 100-page document and tried to consolidate it into slides that they then read to the folks that were there. So if we were looking for a really rousing time, this probably wasn't it. But we've got information that we can provide, and when we discuss it next month, I think we see some challenges based on not only that presentation, but Kristen put Rob in touch with NREL and somebody specific there, and they have shared with us their thoughts on how they may be able to work with us. But they've received a number of proposals, and they will have to go through those proposals and select probably 2 or 3. They're already up to 30. They can partner with somebody, but they can't take the lead on this. And so we still would have to take the lead. And I think currently with what we believe to be the requirements, we don't have in-house expertise to take the lead. So we probably need to hire somebody that has that expertise to assist us with it.
Okay. Thank you.
But we'll get more into that next month when we go over that information.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rob? Seeing none, Jeff, it's back to you. Oh, Justin, sorry.
I just had a quick one, and I had this for later discussion, but I see that Yampa Valley received the $6 million agricultural funds for their broadband. Is that, I think that was in Rob's section.
Yeah, it was, there was another, yeah, it was. And it says middle mile.
Yeah.
Or somewhere I read about it was middle mile, and if you do the math, it's $30,000 per household that they're getting to provide down in Tallahassee.
That was the one I had hoped we applied for 2 years ago. So, but if it's still available, I think we're fairly rural, and Jackson County is definitely in that scope of needing that, that they still might provide part of our backbone even up there.
Well, I was wondering that for our phase 2, I did just see an announcement by the state for another $160 million towards that program.
Yep.
So, and it did cross my mind, like, probably they're not going to give it to us to build, middle mile through Winter Park and Fraser, but from Kremling to the top of Muddy Pass and Muddy Pass to Walden, that seems like it's right up there in the Toponis sort of density area. Yeah.
And we had some conversations with the Colorado office, and that was part of it, is that a lot of our service territory from, say, Grand Lake, Granby down, they believe that it has sufficient capacity. There are those that are saying that the standard needs to be higher, in which case then that would make that available. That has not changed yet, but the areas where we would be able to potentially benefit from it is the area that Liz was talking about, where currently they don't have the infrastructure in place to provide the minimum that they're looking for. The Colorado office.
Okay. Any other questions?
So
Anybody got any quick questions on bills for payment? Go ahead, Dick.
The first section there, we had donations, Devil's Thumb, Rapids Restaurant, Dino's Mountain Bistro. What were those for, if I may ask?
CREA meeting. No doubt. Just kidding.
Do you want me to answer that, Mark?
Oh, yes. Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, Rob.
So that was CREA's request for the silent auction items. They wanted it to be sort of specific to the co-ops area. And what we ended up doing was buying a sort of taste of Grant County or Mountain Parks Electric's membership.
Yeah, I just hadn't seen that and I was curious. That answers it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, it's for the care auction, and those will actually be transferred to Mountain Park Services.
Okay. Also, we had 3 IRS payments in here on 10/9 of about 60,000, 10/15 3.6 thousand, and 10/23 59,000. I was wondering what those 3 checks to the IRS covered. Trying to locate them. Just give me a second.
Looking too, they should all be payroll taxes or quarterly taxes.
Well, I'm trying to see.
I don't know of anything else other than those. We have no assessments, no.
I understand. I'm just trying to, it didn't say payroll taxes. That's why I was curious.
It is on, I don't know what page it is, but it's quite a ways down. I'd say like six pages in, and it's toward the last 2 lines. One says directors, WH October, and then the others below it says 3rd quarter unemployment taxes.
So those were real
Those are the small ones. Never mind.
These were much
Got the
larger.
check number, Dick?
I'm trying to locate it. Give me a second. These were much larger.
Oh,
Okay, right above on that same page, it says federal income tax. They were all said federal income tax, and maybe they should have said payroll tax. That's why I question it. I don't know why we're writing 3 checks for income tax.
No, it's wage withholding, all of them.
Okay, then that answers the
We'll
question.
have it change.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just said income tax. I just was wondering since when. That answers my question. Thank you.
No income tax.
I know.
Question.
Okay.
speaking of income tax, the FEMA stuff that bill passed through Congress so that the FEMA funds aren't considered revenue.
Yes,
So we're
thank
good
goodness.
there. Okay, thanks.
All right, let's move on to board open forum associated reports. Carl, are you there? Do you want to give a tri-state report?
You're fading in and out, Jeff.
Let's go into board open forum and associated reports. Carl, are you able to give a tri-state report?
He is muted.
Carl, yeah, there you go.
Okay, Carl, you're good to go.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
I hear you now.
I had a question for Rob and I couldn't get in, but if you
Well,
want
go ahead.
to address that, okay. We get 10% of our power supply from Basin. Is that figured into the new power supply auction?
Yes.
How so?
Because that 10% comes through Tri-State, and the new power supply option would replace the power that we receive from Tri-State.
So because it comes through Tri-State, it's covered then? Is that my assumption or not?
Yes. Basically, Tri-State gets the power from Basin, and so then Tri-State provides up to 95% of our power based on the 5% that we can self-supply. Under the new power supply agreement, that company would provide all of our power except for the things that we have like Granby, the Tom Cyphers, Walden, and a few of the other projects that are currently in the community solar. So they would provide all of our power, and so we would not have a relationship with Basin.
Okay, thank you.
Carl, that would
What do
mean
you-
that you would not be asked to go to the Basin annual meeting in Bismarck in November. So just something to think about.
And you wouldn't be either.
That's true. But I was thinking of you.
Okay. I don't know what you want to hear from me from the November 2nd meeting or the regular meeting.
How about both, Carl?
Let's start with the
Well-
November 2nd.
I'll start with the November 2nd meeting. A lot of discussion has been made about it. The number one issue is the merge JM Safer to Tri-State. And it's what was explained to me at the meeting is a cleanup of things. When we bought JM Safer, this was included. There was tax issues when we bought it, but those have expired, so it's basically a cleanup issue. The number two issue, which is the Articles of Incorporation, and they admitted to me or at the meeting that it was a cleanup of issues with the lawsuits that are going on with United and La Plata. They are going to strike the fourth whereas, and I can read it to you if you want me to, but that was the basic issue there. And the 200 member issue was a cleanup also, is the requirement by the state to list a number of members, and the 200 members was just picked out of the air. Non-utility members do not have a vote or a board seat. The partial requirements members are basically the members that are existing now, and we have a vote at the December meeting. Non-utility members sign a contract that prohibit them from a board seat. I can't express much more than that. The third meeting, the special meeting notice, only membership can approve this. And this is the basic membership that is there now. So, what I was expressed to at the meeting is that there is basically no change, and I can't argue with Dick's opinion about Tri-State trying to be vague in their promotion of this, but it's up to us to decide that. So that's all I can really report on the December 2nd meeting. The Tri-State,
Carl,
yeah.
before you go on, what was the board's reaction to them being vague? Was the board willing to push the issue to find out why they're being vague about all of this and why it's such an emergency to have to do it so quickly? I'm curious.
I didn't get a feeling of the board at all about being vague. Why they are pushing this is, I think, basically because of the FERC issue and the PUC issue. But I didn't get a feeling that they were being vague about it. I mean, your comments about the tri-state staff being, more receptive to running tri-state is correct. I don't feel that is much different than Mountain Parks or anybody else. Staff runs the organization. The board is there to approve what the GM says or anything else. But if Mountain Parks wants a different representation from Tri-State, Dwayne Hiley has made the effort to go to different board meetings, and he expressed that he's been to 5 or 6 here in the past, and I can arrange a board meeting with him at Mountain Parks, and we can discuss those issues, and you can bring them up. So, I don't know how to answer your question other than that. So,
Well, my concern was they want an answer on December 8th, and our meeting is on the 10th. And, I'm just I don't want to create a problem for us. And I was just trying to get a feel for how you and the rest of Tri-State's board feels about how fast this is coming down and whether or not there were any concerns at the board level going forward with this so quickly. That was what I was getting at.
and I can't disagree with that, Dick. Tri-State can't coordinate all their meetings with different board meetings because they meet at various times throughout the month. So whether it meets with Mountain Parks meeting is, up in the air. But I didn't get any feeling that there was a hurry up about this. I mean, it came about a month ago, honestly. And so, that's the best answer I can give to your question.
All right.
So, Carl, I just want to make sure I understand this. A non-utility member is still a member of Tri-State, and members have the right to vote at the annual members meeting on changes to the bylaws or the articles.
And I can't argue with that, Liz. They don't have a board seat, but I think they can vote at the annual membership meeting. And I didn't ask that question. The 200 membership thing was a clerical error, as they explained to me, that the state of Colorado requires a number of members being designated in the articles of incorporation, and they picked 200 out of the midair. So I think they have a vote at the membership meeting, but I can't confirm that. So maybe Bryson can interject here. I don't know.
Well, at the bottom, it's Article 8 says bylaws. The bylaws of this corporation may be altered, amended, or repealed by the members or the directors of this corporation in manner specified by the bylaws. And then at the beginning of it, it talks about who gets to be members. And basically it says members, public power districts or other entity, and then parentheses, regardless of the nature of its business. So I'm just concerned about, as I expressed in my email to Dick, that I'm concerned that the bylaws that were put in place to govern the relationship between the different distribution co-ops that are members of Tri-State could be changed by non-distribution members, and could really, the balance of power there all of a sudden, about liability, who's in charge of operating our systems, those things would be not as clear anymore. I just have some concerns about that.
And I would also, Liz, honestly, but that question didn't come up, and I wasn't smart enough to bring that up. So that's something that Dick needs to bring up at the special membership meeting. I know they don't have a board seat, but whether they have a vote to change the bylaws at a membership meeting, I can't answer that.
Carl, how do they become members? Who makes that approval? Is that the current board would have to approve a new member?
Yes, the board would approve a new member, but it would only be under a contract situation. So that contract would decipher what conditions were appropriate for that new member and whether they have a board seat or not. So yes, that would come before the board.
But not the membership.
Well, it would be the membership, yes. The board would approve it, but I think it would be finally approved by the membership. But I don't think I can answer that question totally either. But like I said, if these questions want to come up, Dwayne Hiley is more than welcome to come to Mountain Parks and explain all this and answer these questions, which I can't. But if we want to have him come up, I can arrange that. So.
Right, is that all you got, Carl?
Pardon?
Is that all you got?
Yes.
Liz, do you have anything? Green Power?
No, Rob touched on it. Between Barbara, who was evacuated for the Mullen fire, and Steve, who was evacuated for this other fire, we just wanted to give them a little time. Barbara wanted to have a little time to regroup.
Okay. Dick, did you have anything, Western United?
I had the Mark send out the report. Nothing new is going on. They're still expanding, but they're sort of tentative, but all of their numbers look like they're going up. So as far as they can tell, everybody's still expanding, everybody's still building, and they're doing fine. So, we had some discussions about reducing prices so that we would enjoy the benefit of a lower price currently rather than waiting for a patronage refund, and that would affect how they allocate profit to both the employees and the members. There wasn't a big appetite to discuss that in great detail, but it's being taken up by the Budget and Finance Committee, which I'm a member of. We will have a meeting probably in March to go over that and try and make some recommendations so that we can afford the members more of a discount on the front end rather than the back end.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything for open board forum? Mark, do we want to go up? We can tackle action item I. It was
the Granby Play Days donation request.
Yeah. I don't know who wants to go ahead.
This is basically in response to, I believe it was Dick's question about, or Liz, that we reach out to the preschools because we obviously focus on the high schools and the middle schools a lot of times. And this was one that came in after the last board meeting. You see their request there. They're asking for $3,000, $2,000 for new storage systems, and the second part for snow removal costs, because historically their teachers have done the snow removal, but they've lost teachers that they can't replace. And so I don't think that the teachers have the time to do the snow removal. So.
Yeah, and I think they've laid out a pretty good case for why both of those are related to COVID, the space, because they need more space to keep. So I would move to approve this.
Okay, thanks, Liz. We got a motion by Liz. Is there a second? A second by Dick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, looks like the motion carries. Do we have a need for?
Well, I don't believe we have any old or new business.
No old business, no new business. How about this meeting? Do we have a need for that?
I don't believe that we need a Mountain Park Services meeting.
Okay, so it looks like the only thing that we have tabled, which I think we should still keep tabled, are the, it looks like we got the policies and the DOE grant.
Yeah, and those policies, we all think about, there's an alcohol policy, whether we strike that, like to get ready for December, let's think about how some different ways to handle the alcohol policy. And then I think as we have more meetings online and in trainings online, we might want to rethink our per diem structure, make sure we're comfortable with it and that it's specific enough to, so those would be the two things that I thought. As I read those, I was like, oh, we could take forever today going through those.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
really
I want to do a quick survey of what was tabled, just comparing to my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything. We have, like you said, the DOE grant, the 3 policies. Did we table action item A, or did I just not get it noted in my notes?
I think we skipped over that and went to the budget. I think that we can table that. There's no urgency related to it. So I think we could table that. The one thing that I would point out to the board related to the drug policy, if the board is subject to the drug testing policy, that means that you would be included in the random drug testing that we do. So you may be called to come in and do the random drug testing. So it is somewhat problematic to have you guys subject to it. Obviously, if you were ever driving a Mountain Parks vehicle and you had an accident, regardless of fault, you'd have to do the drug test. So those are some things for the board to consider when they determine whether or not they want to be subject to the policy.
Okay.
There was one other, Jeff, there was one other item that was mentioned in the minutes of the previous meeting about posting our tax returns. And it said bring up at a future meeting, and I did not see it on this agenda. I'm wondering whether it'll be on the next agenda. That's all.
It will be on the next agenda. As we were going through, we believed that we would have enough to keep us busy without that item on there. And so we'll throw it onto December agenda.
That was the 990
Yes.
discussion. Okay.
And the only other item I had was, if I'm going to represent you guys at that meeting on the 8th, I need to get the exact detail of the changes that Tri-State is going to vote on. I only have an overview, and I wasn't able to find the actual wording and changes that that were approved by their special meeting. So I don't know where to get those, so I could at least review those and look at the actual wording of what's going on.
I will get those. I'm sure that they are on the MIC, and so I will get those and forward them to you.
Okay.
Please send them to us as well for our analysis.
No, because remember, we're trying to keep the budget down for legal, so no, I'm kidding. Yeah, we'll send them to you too.
And Stacy, I need to talk to you after the meeting about my expense report, how to handle the tax, because I have tax taken out of my per diem and we're donating them. So I just want to make sure you'll be around after the meeting. I'll give you a call.
Sure.
Thank you.
Because Stacy, I don't know if you were on when the board discussed that, but they're looking at making the donation of their per diem for this month to the fund. So
I heard that. I know you and I were going to talk about it. I was thinking prior to paying everyone, I do a lump sum. Mark, you and I can talk about how we do it, to the GoFundMe, to the Grant Foundation. And I heard from everybody except for Dick, Mark, and Carl. So I just need a confirmation from all of you, because I heard Justin, Kristen, Jeff, and Liz for sure were fine with it.
Yep.
Okay.
So Mark, are you good with it?
And so to be clear, though, that was to go directly to the employees at Mount Parks, correct, Liz? That was yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
no-
don't, you know, if we can match it somehow, but I don't want it to go into some other fund where all of a sudden it ends up going to a different, you know. I really feel like the employees, our employees, you know.
I think if maybe we can discuss it just for a minute, since Dick brought it up. We at Mountain Parks cannot give any money to an employee unless through payroll, which they lose part of that through withholding taxes. Another avenue would be to each of you donate we could cut you a check for the per diem and you could donate it over. That's another option. Or directly to GoFundMe from Mountain Parks for $3,500 or so could be done. So,
so
if you have any other
I believe that we can send the money to Mountain Family Center and have them segregate it so that that it is for our employees. And as long as they're dispersing it, and they don't technically disperse it to the employee, they have the employee say what they want to pay with it, and then they will disperse it directly to whether it's rent or deposit or cleanup cost or whatever it is. That way, the money is never actually touched by the employee, and that's why I think it's not taxable.
Well, I guess we should talk, I'm kind of like, I'm just thinking that this is a tough time and it might be helpful for people to have some cash in their pocket or do whatever they need to do, whether it's, kids' clothing or whatever. And I think, staff can sort of look at the trade-offs of taxes for the employees versus, the hassle of going through and having it be limited to very specific things. I just want to support our employees.
Yeah, and it's not, those are just the examples that I came up with. One of our employees will have to have a structural engineer look at their house. And
Right.
So they could submit that bill, which may or may not be covered by insurance, to Mountain Family Center, and Mountain Family Center could pay that. We have one of the employees who has smoke damage. They're going to have to replace their carpeting and have someone come in and do some intensive cleaning in their house. So those costs may or may not be covered by their insurance. And if they aren't, then they could submit those costs to have those reimbursed. So I don't think that we're limiting it, other than it basically something that isn't covered by insurance. So not that we would have anybody do this, but if somebody files an insurance claim for something and then we reimburse them for that same thing.
Okay, so you're going to let us know, Stacy, how this all goes down.
I will definitely let you know how your money was spent. So thank
Seemed
you.
like it seemed like it would just be easy. You know what I mean?
It sounds like Mountain Family Center is a good avenue.
Yeah, it does
Go
too.
directly.
I didn't mean to make it sound like that. I just thought, well, this seems easy.
Not the Stacy Delmonico Retirement Fund.
Well, now if Stacy has a palm tree behind her next month, And if it will come free, you'll know that it didn't go to the Mountain Family Center.
Our per diems aren't worth that much.
She could get to Hawaii. She doesn't have to take her family.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't do that.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else? All right, I appreciate it, and I guess we will go ahead and adjourn.